esta vez me separaron. Dijeron mucho, pero no se olvidaron de callarse. Cuánto odio por mi piel sembraron. Dijeron historia y la tergiversaron. Dijeron guerra, muerte, odio y nos culparon. Siempre. Enfermedades, epidemias nos contagiaron. Exterminación de mi fauna complace a tus mercados. Dijeron riqueza y todo se lo robaron. Oro, platino, diamante, a la fuerza se lo llevaron. Y la actualidad es tan triste que todo aquello que dijeron es lo mismo que hoy se dice más. ¿Quién dice, quién explota, quién se beneficia? El asesino, el mismo que da las noticias. Hay una cuenta fácil que siempre me da las grandes riquezas, de dónde vienen y hacia dónde van.
Independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao, independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao. Nati Dre es afroresistencia, cultura ancestral, afrodescendencia, solidaridad. Esa es la esencia, la diáspora africana eleva la conciencia, conciencia negra, universal, progresista y transcultural. Negros y mestizos revolucionando, pueblos caribeños y africanos en un solo bando. No más explotación, colonialismo interno, no más confusión, supremacía blanca en el Babilón. Soy rojo, negro y verde, afroliberación. Mientras más negro, más represión. Somos creadores, recupera tu visión. Mi misión es educar con amor, contra el silencio, vivo sin temor. Independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao, independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao.
What's happening? What's happening? What's happening? This is the Rise Up Morning Show. You know what we do around here. What's good? How y'all feeling today? You all right?
Good. Okay, Ikemba, with the extra yawn and hands in the air.
You know what I mean? Yawning, burping, passing gas, all that. You know how he do early in the morning.
Hey, I'm up now, man. I was looking forward to this. Yeah.
Okay. Brother said he's looking forward to it. That's special. It warms my heart. You know what I mean? Unlike Isaac, who was talking about going over to the dark side, but we cool though. He got him and Fernando breaking bread with people. No, I'm joking. Anyway, check it out, the Rise Up Morning Show. This is Black Power Media, where you can hear us talk about almost anything in the world. International morning show, you know what I mean? Broadcasting from France and the colonized, what we know as the United Snakes of America, you know, right here in the dungeons of North America. So we are grateful to be here, and we're grateful to talk about movement work. We're grateful to talk about revolution. We're grateful to talk about our culture, you know, and we identify as African people, African and indigenous people, and we will continue to fight and to move forward. And this is one of the tools of propaganda we're using here at Black Power Media. We would like to get started by saying, please subscribe to our channel, which is Black Power Media Reloaded on YouTube, Black Power Media Reloaded. Sign up to our mailing list if you haven't already. And I'm saying all this stuff now before I forget, because we get into it, we forget. Go to blackpowermedia.org, sign up to our mailing list, check out our new magazine, Afro Pick, you know what I mean? Just drop the first issue on that. And yeah, I'm gonna just
the bell. Don't forget the bell.
Don't forget the bell.
I was like, is he gonna say it?
I forgot. You know what I'm saying? That's why you here. Ikemba told us last time. Now Natacha, she remembered. She like hit the bell.
That bell. So you can
What's the purpose of the bell?
Man.
Okay.
Hey, when you said Black Power Media Reloaded,
yes, sir.
What came to mind was Scarface, man. We should have Scarface come on screen saying, I'm reloaded.
Okay, I reloaded. Yeah, that's what we doing around here. That's what we talking about.
Hey, I'm sorry. I've seen the movie so many times, man. That's what the propaganda, you know, the European propaganda does to you, man. Yeah.
No doubt. So I think since you said that so well, we think Ikemba should be known as Scarhead instead of Scarface. You know what I'm saying?
I reloaded. All right.
So you wouldn't even need Al Pacino. Who needs Al Pacino? You got Al Ikemba. You know what I'm saying? We got it. We got it. Anyway, how y'all feeling today? It is Tuesday morning, and yesterday on our other morning show, Decolonizing Feminism and the Captive Maternal Agency, featuring hosted by Dr. Joy James, Talisa Jackson, Khadija Haynes, and our sister Marsha Hines Meir, I believe. I'm jacking up her last name. Dope show yesterday. This is a show I believe that'll be coming on twice a month on Black Power Media, but the first episode, in case you all missed it, I think was fire. What's your thoughts? Anybody check it out?
Yeah, I checked it out. I thought it was fire too. I thought like there was a lot of really good points that were brought up in discussion that was had around like, you know, Black feminism, coloniality, neocolonialism, you know, the systems that currently attack us and that we're currently oppressed underneath, and how to navigate and how we should be navigating those and how we should be looking at and critiquing and building. So I thought that they had a really great conversation. And one of the things that stuck out to me was I forget who said it, but one of the panelists, you know, was saying that she made the statement that your identity doesn't equal what's the word? What's the word? Doesn't equal your identity doesn't equal like revolution. You being revolutionary, like just because you know
your radicalism, right?
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. Doesn't equal like exactly. Doesn't equal your radicalism, and I think that especially in a time where I think there's so much around identity and like I feel like, you know, the identity has become so watered down in the same way that, like, you know, they've watered down things like social justice. So now what is social justice? Like, it's just in the same way that they've watered down all of these things. And now everything is so convoluted that, because, you know, people now will say like, oh yeah, because I'm this, all of a sudden I'm radical or I'm this. No, that's not how it works.
No doubt. I think that was Khadija Haynes, so definitely shout out to her. And they're broadcasting from Brooklyn, Atlanta, Harlem, and Toronto, Canada. Sister Marsha's in Toronto. Yeah, anyone else want to chime in on that colonizing feminism?
Yeah, it was definitely a powerful show. I tapped in to it. Really appreciate them unpacking with the first show, really like unpacking what decolonizing Black feminism, what that means. And, you know, because there were questions on, you know, what is Black feminism? What does, you know, decolonizing that looks like? And I think they really unpacked it and deepened what that means and what it looks like. You know, I appreciate when I'm thinking about it too, you know, just now as I'm talking, you know, Black feminism, because I think like some people, there was like a question about, you know, how do you decolonize something that didn't exist prior to, you know, colonialism, you know, as it pertains to the, you know, the relationship between Europeans and Africans for the last 500, 600 years. You know, but I'm thinking, you know, the phenomenon existed though, you know, prior to the relationship. We think about, you know, colonialism has been around for forever, right? But was it termed colonialism? Did people call it colonialism, right? But it was a phenomenon that existed. So, you know, even with feminism, it's a concept that, you know, we may have heard in the last several decades, but it doesn't mean that, you know, this movement or this phenomenon to resist patriarchy, right? To come up ways to resist oppression and exploitation in the realm of Black women. That existed. As long as there was oppression and exploitation, there were ways to describe it and ways to move against that. You know, so that's how I was looking at that as well, as far as just like to that particular question that was asked. But also, when you think about the movement under colonialism, Black women, whether you want to call it womenism, right, which existed since Black women from its inception, colonialism as a system of exploiting and oppressing African people, that existed 500, 600 years, and there's always been a movement against that. So the co-optation, I think of that, that is what's being decolonized. So no, we might not have been calling it feminism 200 years ago, but I don't think that that's the point that they were making. But I think they can, explain it better than I can.
No doubt, but they're definitely good to good to hear that, especially from a brother, because I know a lot of brothers will automatically, when they see decolonizing feminism, they may look at it from a certain angle or perspective and automatically assume that it's going to be man bashing and all kinds of other things or whatever that may not go with Black feminism, that doesn't have that's not European adjacent. Isaac, you have something to say, bro?
Yeah, I just want to highlight how important this show is in the wake of, a certain section of Project 2025. Literally, if you guys have watched this show called The Handmaid's Tale, it literally describes that. It describes women being subjugated to servitude through patriarchal values and lenses. And so for one to see African sisters, on the screen representing themselves, speaking for themselves, is something that I will always advocate. And it's something that's powerful, especially in the wake of this, Christian, fascist state that we live in, imperialist state that demonizes women for speaking out, especially Black women. So I just want to highlight the importance of that show, the importance of giving space to our African sisters as, men, especially, and I'll just throw this out there, Black men we like to put ourselves in a position to say, like, we're the forefront, like we were exposed to, deep rooted, which we were, oppression, but women, if you look back in history, were subjugated to far worse atrocities that and in history will show it. The history of gynecology, our African sisters were subjugated to some of the worst treatments, and were used as tests, as like lab rats, which founded the history of gynecology. And so having this show, I think, really ushers in that ability for our African sisters to take back their spotlight, to take back their platform. So I just wanted to highlight that. I didn't tune in as often as I will in the future. I had to get a kid ready for school, so I was tuning in the back burner, but yeah, I'm very, very much proud of the show, and I look forward to watching it. So,
no doubt. And interesting that you mentioned Handmaid's Tale, saying that that it took place in the U.S. and Canada, and the hosts are from the U.S. or live in the U.S. and Canada. So that was an interesting piece. So yeah, definitely.
Real quick too, to Isaac's point too, just looking at this history, a Black woman's history in the United States, I think, is a good book to check out. As far as just like looking at women since 1776, but even before that, but that gives a history of Black women since 1776, like creating spaces and resisting patriarchy and colonialism. So again, like, just going back to this decolonizing, feminism, we gotta, look at a movement that existed, but that wasn't necessarily termed feminism at the time, but the idea of resisting oppression and exploitation of Black women has always been around as long as patriarchy, existed.
No doubt. So hopefully you'll put that, excuse me, in the chat. or in the show notes, because folks are always asking for books to read, so on and so forth. Again, check out Decolonizing Feminism, and the Captain Maternal Agency. Should air twice a month. Definitely follow and subscribe so you can be in tune. We also want to mention this new show right here by Public Enemy's Professor Griff. It's called Arm the Masses. This takes place live Wednesdays at noon, 12 noon EST. Make sure you check that out if you missed the last episode of Arm the Masses. Make sure you tune in and check it out. Of course, it's still on the police. And you can find all our shows, bios, and information about all the hosts and everything on our website, which is blackpowermedia.org. Blackpowermedia.org. Anybody check out Griff's last show?
I commented in, and he read the comment because we were in. It was in the constructs of, like these individuals that are running for presidency or even just running for local, municipal, seats. What they say they're going to do, what's their black agenda. And, I just commented, they don't have a black agenda. The black agenda is destroy the community, ignore the community. That's the agenda. And so Professor Griff misinterpreted what I said, and he was but it was all clear towards the end, like that episode, that inaugural episode. I just have to, for everybody who's watching right now, please go and watch that episode, because he doesn't just call out people within the industry that say they're doing stuff and are doing things, but he does it in a way that makes it very clear. I'm not running from you, so don't run from me. When you put my name in your mouth, or you talk foul about me, or you don't like how I say certain things. And so you got to give respect where respect is due, to the OG, to the elder. And so I highly advise people to go and watch. Like most shows that are on here, with time will get better and better and better and better and better and better. And so, I put every dollar, and I don't got a whole lot, but I put every dollar on that. So
no doubt.
Yo, I had jumped in the studio when Professor Griff, he was going in, and when I came in at the moment he started. It was like he was looking around. He's like, Kalonji, where Kalonji at? Kalonji coming on in? Oh, he doing something right now.
Cats throwing it on me. See how Ikemba started trouble, man? You know what I mean?
Nah, he did. I was like, yo, but we was working though. But it was just funny because I knew what you was doing at that time. So I was like, yo.
No doubt. All good.
I'm gonna definitely go and check it out, because I didn't get to see the first show, but I had heard Isaac talking about it and saying like it was a really great show. So I definitely want to go back and watch it, but also watch other ones.
No doubt. It's good to see Black Power Media is growing. You know what I mean? So we're definitely happy about that. I want to add to what our good brother Isaac said. Isaac said, I'm putting every dollar into this, and I ain't got a lot. So you could too, to the viewers. Make sure you support what it is we're doing. You know what I mean? Yeah. Scrolling at the bottom, like an elder told me one time, he said, ain't no nation like a donation without a donation. Mm-hmm. So if you like what you're seeing and you would like to see us grow, put something on it. You know what I'm saying? Because liberation, it's a price to pay. Malcolm said the price for liberation is death. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? The price for freedom is death. But we're going to try to live through this thing and make it do what it do. You're checking out the Rise Up Morning Show. We're going to go to a quick Black Power break, and we're going to be back at you with some news. It might not be good news, but it's damn sure going to be hood news. Anyway, Rise Up.
At the time of Jesus' birth, and we've talked about that in this meeting before, and I want to say some more about it. At the time of Jesus' birth, the Jews, like most people in the world that was known at that time, were dominated by the Romans. They were living under colonial domination, colonial bondage, just like African people here and just like we have in various places around the world been living. The Jews lived under Roman domination. The Romans had what they call an empire. An empire is where a government of a people not only dominate and rule their own people, but many other peoples around the world. The Roman Empire was comparable to what America is today. America is an empire. It feels like it can tell people what to do, and if you don't do it, we'll attack you. You can't have this kind of weapon or that kind of weapon. We'll blow you up. We'll take your oil. We'll do all these other kinds of things to you. That's how Rome was during the day. And except it was a more honest, they call it an empire today, even though if you read certain kinds of documents and certain kinds of papers being written by the thinking representatives of the white power today, more and more they are referring to America as an empire. Except they don't call Bush an emperor, they call him the president. Well, back then they were more honest, they called him the emperor. Rome had an emperor. An emperor and empire, you can see the connection between the names. An emperor is someone who rules over an empire. Now, the thing is that the people who are citizens of the empire, they live well because they live off the fruits of what the emperor brings from all over the world, all the oppressed peoples of the world. You find all their resources coming to the empire, coming to Rome. And they were coming from every place. The Jews, and I'm speaking of Jews, but Jews are just Semites who lived in what they now call the Middle East. Arabs are Semites, and there were all other kinds of people, Syrians and what have you, who are also Arabs, etc., who lived in the same area. And all of them had to pay tribute to Rome. So the Romans lived pretty well. The Rome, of course, is in Europe, as you know, right? Rome is in Europe. What they call Italy now is the headquarters of what Rome was, white people. And although it may or may not have been an issue at the time, the Jews were not white people. Jews got white lately, relatively lately. And the Jews were dominated by the Romans. And the Jews didn't want to be dominated by the Romans because any thinking human being wants to be self-determining. They don't want somebody else over them. They don't want somebody else dominating them, do they? They want to be a you can't have a national dignity if every time you look up there's somebody who's telling you how you have to do things and when you have to do it. And in fact, set terms for you, say you can't even act like a black person. Oh, you can't. Not in America if you're going to succeed. And everybody in here know that's the truth. If you be too black, you will not succeed. You can't go on the job being black, right? You can't go nowhere being too black. You remember when they used to not hire you if you had dreadlocks, if you had cornrows, if you had afros, or any of those stuff? You can't be too black. Only when white people started getting dreadlocks was it cool. So, and when they found out that dreadlocks didn't mean nothing for a lot of these old sellouts, and sometimes you had a dreadlock and a processed brain. You had dreadlock hair and a perm on your brain. You understand? So they discovered that, and they said, let the Negroes have dreadlocks. But that's how empire runs it. And when you have an empire, people are asking the question like about what happened to Mtundu. And Mtundu spoke out, and the police attacked him. And white people say, oh, the police don't act that way. And it's true, the police do not act that way. If you're citizens of the empire. If you were Roman citizens, the Roman police didn't treat the white people in Rome the way they was treating the Jews who were living in Israel. Treat you differently. Because one was a citizen and then one was a subject. There's a difference in being a citizen and a subject, right? So when Jesus was born, Rome was living, the Jews were living under Roman domination, and they had the same kinds of problem that you got today. Among the problems that you have when somebody else runs your affairs, you can't get along with each other. You notice that? And you say it all the time. Niggas just can't get together. You say it all the time. And one of the reasons it's hard for you to get along with each other is because you displace your anger. You mad with the ruling class. You stay mad with white people, but you done found out you disguise it even to yourself. Now you get insulted all the time. Almost every day you get insulted. And the reason you don't go behind the counter and snatch them up and do something damaging to them because they're going to say, call security.
Call security. Anyway.
Scared of security.
You know what I'm saying? Quick. Yeah, you know. Yeah, there was Chairman Omale Yesitela of the African People's Socialist Party. We want to remind you that he and two of his comrades will be facing trial in the next week or so. September 3rd, I believe, for the next 3 weeks. And we encourage folks to head down to Tampa to support these good folks in their plight. They're trying to give this man 15 years, trying to give him 15 years. Of course, as he mentioned, he's going on 83 years old, which would put him close to 100 years old if he did these 15 years in federal prison. For folks who want to check out his story, we just had him on the Rise Up Morning Show about a week or so ago. And make sure you go back and check out that episode if you haven't. And if you have checked it out, make sure you share it, because those numbers right there are very important. We need people to know how the state is getting down and that they don't care about how old you are, how much work you've done in the community, who knows you, how popular you are. None of that matters when it comes to the state. They want you to know that they will kill you in no uncertain terms. They will assassinate you. They will use what we call death by incarceration if they can. And that's what's going on with Leonard Peltier, who just got hit with another 15-year parole extension. You know, he was denied parole back in June. He's scheduled to be 80 years old on September 12th. So they told him to come back in another 15 years to see if he can be paroled. Now, I visited Leonard in June, and I have to say, Leonard has all types of ailments, can hardly walk, damn near blind, you know, intimate blindness, and all kinds of other ailments. There's no way that he'll be committing any crime if he got out. It doesn't even make sense. I mean, it's like, it's nonsense. But this is how the state gets down. And I know that one of the questions that they pose, and I'm not even, let me just say this. The state is out of their damn mind. And if Leonard even is alive in 15 years for this parole with his medical conditions, he'll be going on 95 years old. That's for another parole hearing. That's not for him to get out. You're talking about a man that's been locked up almost 50 years, 5 decades. You know, so this is what they think of you. Umia Abu Jamal, same thing. Just turned 70 this past April 24th. Medical conditions, you know, again, death by incarceration. So they will try whatever. If they don't outright assassinate you, as my grandmother used to say, I might not get you in the wash, but I'll get you in the rinse. They'll try to get you in the rinse. And that's just the reality of things. Anyway, make sure you support our political prisoners and support our freedom fighters, because you too can be one just for living. Anyway, checking out the Rise Up Morning Show. Y'all doing all right?
Yeah. Just you know, thinking about
what's on your mind.
No, just what Kalonji was saying, just in terms of you know, the number of freedom fighters that have transitioned behind the wall, and those that they've you know, let out at the very last minute, 2 months before you transition, you know, 3 months before you transition. We, you know, like just thinking about, you know, Matulu Shakur and Russell Maroon Schultz and you know,
Michelle McGee, Marilyn Buck. I think Marilyn Buck was out like 5 days before she transitioned. You know, so, and this is a white woman. but she's a white woman who could have been released had she assisted the state on her Black liberation brothers, folks like her and Sylvia Berardini, who refused, and they would rather take that time. You got, I hate to say it, but you got some brothers and sisters in the community that might run with some cats as soon as they get the opportunity to get 5 minutes of it, they telling everything. He was driving, he had a blue shirt on, then Ikemba came through, he had glasses on, not the ones he had last year, but he got some new ones. They tell every damn thing they know. You know what I mean? But that's just it is. But to your point though, Natasha, I think that we are desensitized. And I think that in order for folks to grasp what we're saying about these ailing political prisoners, folks like Sundiata Acoli, who I know you've been around, you know what I'm saying? Folks, you know, Sundiata's like 87, 88 years old. You know what I mean? And spent so much time. I mean, it's ridiculous. But for the listeners, you almost have to think about the oldest person, the eldest person in your family, in many of your families, and imagine them being incarcerated, and imagine them being told that they can come back in about 15 years for another parole hearing. This is how insane and how diabolical this beast is. So we want you to understand that, you know, we're not here to entertain you. We're not here to be liked by you. We're not here to indoctrinate you. We're not even here to convince you. We're here to remind you that this is what we're up against and that we're taking action and you should too. Anyway, checking out the Rise Up Morning Show. We got some news that we want to hit up.
Yeah, I think your story first, Kalonji.
Fine. I was already running my mouth. She want to throw me under the bus. I think you need to talk, Kalonji.
Hey, let me say something before you get to your story. Give you a break, right?
Well, you go to your story first if you want to do that.
I got something else to say. But isn't this why it's important though that you know, we are part of this liberation struggle. We want to liberate ourselves from the empire, as the chairman was speaking about. But even within the empire, our movement, we should at least have sort of a representation, like a sort of a state, you know, within the state, a institution that we can look to as, you know, this radical revolutionary institution that represents the people and that can really speak on behalf of the people, even, you know, on the Senate floors. You know, I feel like we don't even have that. At bare minimum, we should at least be organized, even though ideologically we may have differences, or, you know, you did something with my partner back in the day, so I ain't messing with you, you know, a little personal beast. Like, that doesn't even matter when it comes to creating an institution that can at least speak on behalf of the people and say, hey, you know, we want Mumia out, you know, and make those demands. We don't have that. And so I don't know, like, that's why, because our political because we can say, hey, you know, these are our liberation, these are our freedom fighters right here, you know, and speaking on behalf of the Black community, right? These are our freedom fighters, and we want them to be free. We don't have that collective voice. So, you know, it's just a thought I had, man, as we're speaking, and I know we're moving. There's movements towards that, but we got to move with a bit more sense of urgency, man, because it's been urgent, you know. But I just wanted to.
Son, say Isaac.
I just, to compound on what Ikemba was talking about in the context of that, is like some of the people from our diaspora don't even know the names of some of these political prisoners that are behind bars, and that's literally the problem that we as individuals that are within this, you know, the struggle for liberation have to consistently keep highlighting. We have brothers and sisters that are behind bars for pettyless crimes, some of which were holding $20 worth of weed back in 1970 something, and now they got 30 years, 40 years worth of, time for pettyless, meaningless, and it's a system that's designed to keep them through New Jim Crow, is what people call it, through those means. When you were bringing up Kalonji, like, while you were talking, was literally I was like, damn, like mom, I call my grandmother my mama. I'm like that's like Mumia is my mama's age. Like that's I wouldn't be able to comprehend. Literally, I wouldn't be able to comprehend. And that's one thing too that we have to identify too. We don't understand shit until it personally affects us. Okay, so like how I literally just said right now, I'm a victim to that. Is like I didn't really understand until Kalonji had to say, okay, well, look at it from a perspective of you have aunts and uncles and whatnot, and I actually have family members that are incarcerated right now that are facing life for pettyless crimes. It's an eye opener, and it's an eye opener in a way that doesn't like make it like a positive, like it gives me a gut wrench feeling like what the fuck am I doing? It makes you wonder, like the work that you're doing, is there more that could be done? So that's like what I wanted to highlight, is that we live in a world where we can't blame our diaspora for not knowing certain things, because the system in of it itself makes it hard for us to make it, for things to be visible, basically. So yeah.
And I appreciate you pointing it out, Isaac, because again, we talk about one of my leaders is Imam Jamil Al-Amin, formerly known as H. Rap Brown. Imam Jamil's 80. He'll be 81 in October 4th. You know what I mean? So we have to your point, part of the reason why we continue down this slippery slope is because of the fact that we don't personalize this. Our oppression should be taken personal. You know what I'm saying? The genocide of African and indigenous people across the planet should be taken very personal. The fact that we don't see it as such is partially the reason why we are in the conditions we're in right now, because we don't take it personal. We've taken it as, it's almost like entertainment. You know what I mean? It's like nowadays, who could report first that something fucked up happened? Pardon my English. You understand what I'm saying? Who could report the first death? We are a death-driven culture. You know what I mean? Folks are racing. I knew a cat that, for instance, you mentioned Dr. Mutulu Shakur. His family hadn't even announced his transition, and someone in the movement quickly posted breaking news, Mutulu Shakur, blah blah blah, and his family contacted me and asked him, because I was working with him, to take it down. I told them they didn't appreciate it and they wanted him taken down. He didn't even take it down because people was liking it, because so many people liked it. So it's like, it's up now. You understand what I'm saying? So the disrespect for life, saying that I'm for and against something at the same thing. I guess two things can be true at the same time, but we have to be clear about our purpose. As far as Black Power Media, our purpose is not to just report to you all the effed up things that's happening up in the world. Our purpose is to get you involved and engage you to some point of unity and possible organization. You have organizers on the screen right now. When we talk about political prisoners, we're not just talking about political prisoners for a tearjerker. We are actively engaged in fighting for the liberation of political prisoners. And we use what I call creative resistance. The organization I represent is the FTP movement. How do we engage political prisoners? One of the things we do is a program that we've been pushing for years called Poets for Political Prisoners. You know what I'm saying? This is a piece where we have different artists and activists and everybody from the last poets to members of Dead Prez to Amiri Baraka and all types of freedom fighters in between, from the Ruba Ben Wahad to Pam Africa, have been involved in this thing. That's creative resistance. You also have Curb Fest. You know what I mean? Creative resistance. It's like, how do we get the people out and we make it look fly We make it sound good and engage people in organizing, introduce them to organizations that they might not have known existed. But the thing is, keeping it 100, we also have folks that set trip. When we're talking about our liberation, I don't want to hear about only what your organization is doing. Well, we over here doing this. Well, we doing that. That's the problem. What are we doing collectively? And if we're not doing anything collectively, then it's like we're pissing in the wind. It sounds good in theory, but in practice, it means nothing. This isn't a race to see who will be the spokesperson of the oppressed, the spokespersons for the oppressed. That's ridiculous. But that's how a lot of folks are rolling. It's a popularity game. How many followers you got on Twitter? Who retweeted you? How many blue checks you got? Yeah. How many blue checks you got? Fuck your blue check. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, either we're going to be free or not.
That's it.
On the plantation, it wasn't like, well, Massa gave me a gold chain to put around my neck, or this particular oppressor don't beat me as much. No, we don't want to get beat, and we don't want to be oppressed. You know what I mean? And that's what it is at the end of the day. Sorry if we went on a tangent, but we'll blame Ikemba.
Hey, but the problem is that there was some slaves who were like that. That's why we still got this problem now.
There's still some slaves that's like that.
Yeah.
And some of them are organized slaves. Some of them are part of organizations now.
Yeah, like there was some research done. I can't remember the author now. I got documents somewhere, and he was looking at sort of class distinctions on a plantation in South Carolina, and some of the enslaved Africans would be able to make some extra resources, or to make some resources. By using their skills, right? And with those resources, they would have some property. They would be able to buy some property and so forth. So on the plantation, you would have those who didn't have property, didn't have anything at all, and those enslaved who may have had a little bit of property that they purchased. And so there would be clashes between them, because of this sort of like, I guess you could say, class distinction that existed. They would quarrel, over property, and some thinking that they better and so forth, and then somebody's property end up missing. You know what I'm saying? I just would bring that up though, because it's something that's been around for even during that time, man, for hundreds of years.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think we were talking a little bit about cultural nationalism and political nationalism before, but like one of the things when we think about it is to be able to, even like when you were talking about during like enslavement, and I don't even know if I would call that class distinctions. Maybe it was, so we can have another word for it, because definitely that can't even be it within enslavement, right? But just like the way that what goes into making sure that you're going to be put in particular positions for you to act in certain ways based on what your ideas are and your values are, based on what your cultural outlook is. So when we think about, the legacies of enslavement, what happened during enslavement, even, during colonialism, even and continues today, this rupture that was created between your culture and, who you are and your practices and your politics. Like, so the loss of that, because even when we think about today, like if someone says, oh, there's if there's someone imprisoned in the what do you call it? Like outside the US, that's an American citizen. Let's think, for example, like Brittany Griner, who was, imprisoned in Russia. Everybody was like, we got to get her out there. She's an American, like, because they've made you buy into, right, this cultural idea, and they make sure to reinforce it too, right? It's not that they just put the story out there. No, they make sure that they put all of the things in place through the education system, through the media, through advertising, through writing, through books, through every single aspect that they can think of to make you feel like you are connected to this American, quote unquote, American community, so that whenever they're ready, whenever they need you to support, you're on it. When they say, oh, that's an American person over there. Oh, you now all of a sudden, you don't even have to think like we were talking about before individually. Nobody has to say, well, what if your grandmother? Well, what if your grandfather? People don't even have to say that to you. The only thing they're saying is, oh, that's an American. They're in prison here. And all of a sudden, people are like, yes, we have to do everything we got to do. Like, what do we have to do, like, to get this American, blah, 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 blah. And so I think it, goes back to understanding, like, people think that they're not practicing a culture or that they don't belong to a community, right? That you're just out here doing your own. No, you're very well organized into a culture and a community, and that's the European American culture and community that they want you to be organized with. And when they tell you one of yours, as an American is in trouble, you don't think twice, and they make sure they spread the news, they do all that other stuff, and you're willing. And people are willing to participate, and you don't have to do too much convincing. And so I think it's, it's how we've been and continue to be misorganized, like we were saying before. And even what the chairman said in the video, in terms of like, just like knowing who you are, but also having been organized to do what the empire wants you to do.
Right. And that goes to what Ikemba was saying, in regards to the whole class, because Ikemba, when you talked about the whole classism, that goes hand in hand with this whole prison situation as well, because just being a quote unquote American has its borders and boundaries, right? So that's when the class comes in, because if my black ass is locked up in Russia, there's no negotiating. No one cares. They cool with me getting beaten or whatever the case. Whatever is going to happen, that's all right. But Brittany Griner was a WNBA basketball player. So she has a certain degree of status, so they couldn't ignore her. Now, truth be told, some of these white men would have still ignored her because of the fact that they would say she doesn't earn enough for them. Don't get it twisted. But her complexion and her money or her status made her someone that they was interested in liberating. I'm sorry, Isaac.
No, please don't apologize, because we're having like a really good conversation, and Natacha brought up something, and I know we have a lot of articles that we're to break down, so maybe I'll take some time out of my article to help formulate and compound and just
No, you won't. We can still do your article, but go ahead.
Natacha brought up something that was very important: sports and media. There's a book that I want you guys, and I can actually send it to you. It's a PDF that I have. I can send it to everybody on the screen if you guys don't already have it. By Roger Stahl, called Militainment Inc. And it talks about war media and popular culture. And there's chapter 2 talks about sports in general, and I actually have it pulled up right here. It says sports in the militarized body politic. And so I'm actually going to be, I'm going to be breaking this down like extensively for like the next week. And so I hope individuals, have watched the episode that I conducted yesterday, that goes in depth a little bit on this, where I bring up this video. And so they use the military, they use media in general to formulate this idea of this quote unquote American patriarchal value. And like how Kalonji said, the reason why people were so hell-bent on getting Brittany Griner and not Julian Assange is because Julian Assange exposes Western hegemonic tendencies and atrocities, while Brittany Griner has value to American hegemony. So you see, there's a difference, a complete difference right there, is that they would rather not say anything about Julian Assange, or even say or put themselves in a position to align opposed to Julian Assange, but align themselves with Brittany Griner, because Brittany Griner brings millions of dollars, if not billions, in the next 4 or 5 years of revenue for the WNBA. And so that this also falls in the line of the NBA as well, when we have individuals like what we just seen in the 2024 Olympics, where they were using black and brown individuals to win gold medals, and for them to feel patriotic and to feel like, you know, that is purposeful, that is designed for them to do it. The fact that we have individuals like Coach K, who had the Redeem Team. If anybody knows about the Redeem Team, he used to bring in whole ass army generals, and they used to talk to these players and talk about, we're fighting for your freedom abroad. How are you fighting for my freedom abroad when I'm here? You're not fighting for freedom. You're fighting for value. You're fighting for hegemony. You're fighting to make sure that these players they keep their millions of dollars, that narrative stays afloat, that we need multiple class systems for which the people are subjugated, and the most people that are subjugated and are in these lower classes look like us on the screen. So again, Natacha brought up something that was very important, and that chapter specifically by Roger Stahl and Militainment Inc. Again, that's War, Media, and Popular Culture. That's the name of the book. I highly advise individuals to read that. Another book for individuals to read is National Security Cinema. You start to understand through media, through pop culture, through what people call indie cult classics, you know, like Red Dawn. Red Dawn was a part of the Red Scare. It was part of propaganda, you know, to get you to be anti-Russian. It was Russophobia. It was anti-Cuban. They doubled down in 2012 and made a remake to make you xenophobic, to make you anti-Islamic, or to make you Islamic phobic. Over 2,500 films in general over the course, and that's just what's been discovered from Matthew Alford and Tom Secker's National Security Cinema. There's over, I want to say, over 25,000 or no, over 30,000 documents just alone that go over all the movies that were made to by the Department of Justice, i.e. the Pentagon, to formulate these narratives. It's not even just the war movies. That's like things like Extreme Makeover Home Edition. That's like Cake Boss. These are all shows, reality TV shows that we watch, and we don't even realize that they're implementing this form of patriarchal value to American hegemony. At the same time, we're just eating it all up. People from the diaspora eat it all up, and that, you know, that's why we have individuals that look like us. They want to go to the military. They want to support this system, the values, because they think they're fighting for their freedom. They've fallen for the trap of believing that our enemies are abroad and that we do nothing wrong, when all the while we're the enemy and we just keep fucking pillaging and raping and exploiting and oppressing all over. So I know I held this back a little bit, but I wanted to hold this back.
Can I hold this back though? Can I hold this back just a little bit more?
Let me say this before you hold us back. You're actually not holding us back, as long as we're coming with the information that's necessary. You know what I mean? It's not like you're talking a bunch of gibberish or BS.
And I'll actually be talking to Roger Stahl, I want to say tomorrow. I haven't really gotten a direct, and I'm also working on getting Roger Stahl to come on here. Roger Stahl has appeared on Breakthrough News Network. He has his own a new documentary that came out in 2022 called Theaters of War. And so I highly advise individuals to go and watch that. For the past year and a half, this has been my work. This has been me kind of ushering myself into finding out what we digest on screen, you know, how that emulates into what people think realistically happened, you know. So like when they watch, you know, the Huey P. Newton shit on Apple, you know, TV, or they watch Spike Lee's, Malcolm X, how are people interpreting what's in that movie to be realistic? And that's really what it's intended to do, so that it gets you away from the real narratives of understanding that multiple organizations, even the people who, you know, Malcolm thought loved him, you know, and wouldn't do this to him, had something to do with it. And so, you know, there's just a lot that's there, and that's just been my body of work the past, you know, I would have to say year, is really understanding that and getting people to.
Real quick, I want to remind folks to check out Isaac's show, because he hadn't mentioned it. He mentioned everybody's show but his own, Indigenous Nightmare. Check out Indigenous Nightmare.
We charge colonialism too. That's another show that I was actually watching yesterday. I think it was. You guys were live.
I was going to get to that. Let me do my job, man.
Now I'm talking too much. My bad.
I'm gonna have his ass host. Anyway, yes, check out Indigenous Nightmares. I was saying Isaac's show. Isaac, like, what about this? Also check out We Charge
He made
Colonialism.
your point exactly. He made your point.
Yeah. We Charge Colonialism. Our sister, where these two great people at the bottom of the screen, not the bottom of the barrel, where we recruited them from. We Charge Colonialism. And also, I almost forgot, make sure you check out Fernando's show right here on Black Power Media, which is called Vital Hoops. He just had a new episode drop on last Thursday. So definitely, these are some platforms that we highly recommend, because some folks would like you to believe that we don't exist, and that's cool, because that's what white folks do, and folks who want to be like white folks do. So anyway, you're checking out Rise Up More the show. I think
Habana Negra too, just so that we, Fernando does big things, so he got multiple shows.
No doubt. Habana Negra. Y'all about to name 8 more shows. Listen. Anyway, Ikemba, what you had to say before I cut you off?
Yeah, just the source I wanted to give folks that, in case they're interested in reading it. Jeff Ford, he wrote Conflict in the Slave Community, Violence Among Slaves in Upcountry, South Carolina. And again, it's really
what was his name again, brother? I'm sorry, Jeff what?
Jeff Ford. Forret.
Oh, okay. They said Jeff Ford.
Forret. Cool. And in that it's really good research that he does, but he's one of the things that he's bringing out in the article is just like this nuance that existed on the plantation. Like, everybody wasn't just holding hands and saying we're all together against the slave masters. Even among themselves there was conflict between property owners, not going to say class, but some people who may have been like property owners and those who didn't have property at all, right? And another good one, Nathan here, Black Anglo-Saxon. As we were talking, that book just kept coming to mind, and even going back to the chairman and this empire that we're a part of, and Africans who want to assimilate and be a part of the empire, for whatever reason. You know what I'm saying? Because you got some people who are conscious of the contradictions and still are willing to participate in empire against the interests of African people. And then you have people who just totally oblivious to what's going on, this relationship that we have. But he gets into, the middle class and this assimilation and being sort of just leading African people to want to also be a part of the very system that has historically oppressed and exploited us. So yeah, the Black Anglo-Saxon is another good one. I think it's it's really important, just going back to what the chairman was talking about, empire, like understanding we are a part of an empire. We are domestically colonized, internal, with the relationship that we had. Kwame Ture talked about internal colonialism. That is what we're dealing with. And once we begin to describe our situation that way, we can begin to move in the right direction, like some of us are. The last thing I want to say, though, because Isaac had brought up the media, and it was bringing me back to Transformers, man. If you ever watch Transformers, and I didn't know this as a child, but when you look at that, the Decepticons and the Autobots, they would be fighting over energy, right? Energy. The Decepticons will always want to get energy, fill up their energy cubes with oil. So they, every show, they would be and this was in the 80s, right? When right after the oil crisis, in the 70s. And this struggle, American struggle to get oil, right? That still, has been a major cause of conflict in the Middle East, right, for the last few decades. So when you go back and look at Transformers, it's more propaganda that's being put out there, right? And then even with the media, if you look at who the terrorists are, how that would change depending on what's happening around the world. So we go from Russians to Arabs, being the terrorists. And remember, there was a few movies that came out where the Koreans were the ones who were trying to take over America, right? I think it was like White House Down or one of those. Might have been another because
Angel Has Fallen or like the Olympus Has Fallen or
yeah,
something.
yeah. There was like similar movies that came out.
Those were all DOD movies that were the scripts were heavily changed. We could have a whole conversation today, literally about this said topic, about how they manipulate us.
We as you see, we got these movie geeks on the joint. I didn't even know. I know more about Decepticons in Brooklyn than I do on Transformers. So,
really? Yeah.
I'm just finding out that they was getting fueled with oil. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
Thank you, Natasha. You and I, we're in a different zone.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. Also, because I wasn't like a lot of the stuff that was.
You had time for games. Just say it.
Yeah, no, because I didn't know. For many years of my life, I didn't know what was going on in America because I was learning English.
Hey,
let alone all this other stuff that watching Decepticons and doing all that other stuff.
Oh man, I grew up on that.
Stuff to do. Anyway, definitely.
Children's show, though. Children's show.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The ones that I know what the ones you're talking about. Yeah.
Fat Albert and the Jackson 5 was what I was watching. Anyway, checking out the Rise Up Morning Show. I want to remind folks that we are looking for media interns, as you can see on the screen. We have I know some of you have emailed us. We have a new staff, and we're working slowly. We had some changes to the guard. We know that, so we want to remind folks we are looking for media interns. You can go to blackpowermedia.org. and fill out the form if you're interested, because I know, like I said, folks have hit us up. Go to blackpowermedia.org and we will get you right. We'll schedule a meeting or whatever, fill out the paperwork, what needs to take place. And, we only need serious inquiries only, because I know that sometimes some of you have ideas, but you don't quite think them all the way through. You know what I mean? So try to think them all the way through. We don't have time to waste. Like Natasha said, we ain't got time for no games. Anyway, we're going to go to this quick Black Power break. I'll have my man Isaac hit us with the nah, I mean. Isaac, I want to try and cut you off. Isaac looking away from the camera now like, I knew this motherfucker wasn't talking about Decepticons. Anyway. Rise Up Morning Show, Black Power Media. Pull up.
To the Washington Post, I want to get this correct. I don't think that anything we can do to white people would ever equal what they've done to us. I really don't. White people are born guilty, and there is no redeemer.
Oh, I absolutely said that.
What do you mean by born guilty?
What I mean is this, that in America, white children are raised to be white supremacists, meaning to believe that they're superior. And as they're raised, they're integrated into a system of power that protects their alleged superiority. We as African people have never enslaved and captured European people, taken them from their land, raped their women, changed their culture, suppressed their ability to be educated, and do all of the wicked things that white America has done to African people. Therefore, there is no such thing in my mind as reverse racism, because reverse racism would imply that we had in some way even the scales, and certainly as African people, we have not done that.
Do you know any white Americans who resisted that education and went the other way?
Resisted what education?
The education to grow up superior.
It depends on what you say as went the other way.
Fought for equal rights, got involved in the civil rights movement, put their life on the lines as young men did in Mississippi and Alabama in the civil rights movement. You don't think whites did that?
I think that there are white people who have made ostensible moves towards addressing this system, but I think when we get down to the fundamental issues of power, meaning not the question of whether blacks and whites can go to restaurants together or whether Africans and Europeans can marry one another, not the ostensible questions, but when it comes down to the question of power, white people, European people in this country have not served us well.
All right. We're back. Kalonji, step down for a minute. Have you guys seen the full interview by any chance?
The full one of the clip that you just showed?
Yes.
No, I've only actually ever seen clips. If you have the link, send me the link for the full.
Yeah, I have no problem.
I would love to watch it because so many of the things that she said in a, it's been chopped up and there's so many clips, so many different places. I think she's really spot on with.
Yeah.
Because
go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say, because people, I think the way that, especially like the way that Larry King was posing the question to her and, the way that he's framing it, people love to, skim the surface, as she was, basically pointing out that, what you're talking about here is like these surface things that are ancillary, whatever that the word is, to what we're actually needing to talk about. And what we're talking about and what matters and is important is power. Not this other stuff that you want to sprinkle in front of us and be like, oh, but what about this? But what about that? No, the question is, it's a question of power.
Yeah. And what are your guys' experiences like centered around reverse racism? Sorry, Ikemba, I if you had any words to
no, go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, I was just asking, just in general, like a roundabout question before Kalonji comes back and we get to some of these important articles. Like, what are your guys' experiences with like reverse racism, like working as like organizers, working as like individuals that like try and say some bullshit like that? Like, well, you're being racist towards me. It's like, I'm sorry. I have no prejudice, maybe,
yeah.
But
bigoted, but
yeah.
No, that whole reverse racism thing, I don't even like, I'm just like, I'm not even gonna go there with you. But I will say that I've found that that this idea has been put out there enough that there are Black people who now call, who, because they have a critique of the system, but maybe they don't know, like all the words for it, like you can have a bunch of thoughts, but you might not be able to say like, okay, this is what I'm doing, and they'll call themselves racist. And I'm just like, you're not racist. That's not you being racist, but that Black people who actually have a real critique, they might not be the people who have a critique that are, academics or in a particular space that they have to articulate their position all the time, but they have a critique and they do challenge right where they are. But, because people tell them that they're being racist, that's reverse racism, that they're taking it on and be like, okay, well, I guess I'm a racist, but no, you're not.
Well, also just like with race, well, and this is the discussion or conversation we have to have with folks, is like being African and being, Black is also a socio-cultural term. You know what I'm saying? Like race, we are like race. You dealing with biology, and that's tricky, right? Because it's like, okay, there's the human race. You know what I'm saying? That whole race distinction thing, that's something white folks, y'all created that, talking about the Europeans. But we're talking about socio-cultural terms.
Jane Elliott said we're one race, we're the human.
hey, I mean, I ain't going, this is some folks, I ain't even gonna go where some people came from and all of that, right? But it's a socio-cultural term we're talking about. It's the same thing if you have the Jewish community making a demand or an ask for something for their community or the Indian community. Boom, that's the same thing. It don't have anything to do with like, when we make demands for our community, that we're being racist towards other communities. And it's the history, and it's the repair. We still trying to repair or advance, our community due to centuries of being oppressed and exploited under this system. So, like there is no you can't even get caught up in that trick. And Malcolm said it best, when he in his last message, when he said, if a robber comes in your house to rob you, and you chase them out of your house, like that's not, you're not a reverse robber. You know what I'm saying? Like that don't make any sense. You know what I'm saying? So, we just got to be able to articulate, our stance when we're fighting for African people, man.
No doubt, no doubt. Checking out the Rise Up Morning Show and some ones and twos, if that's all right with y'all.
You want me to go into this Burkina Faso piece?
I mean, we already got this particular piece on the screen now, brother right here.
All right, so I'm sorry, I'm looking at who that's.
That was I was making some suggestions.
Oh, okay, cool. You know what? And I think Natasha's right, so I'm gonna we're going to that right after this piece right here, if that's okay. I didn't see what you said. And I know folks are like, what are they talking about? We're doing our brain joints. We're like sending brain. We're like, this is going on right now. Anyway, again, you're checking out the Rise Up Morning Show. This piece right here, of course, folks may or may not know, I'm in the very racist state of Georgia. And folks forget that Atlanta's in Georgia sometime. But this story right here talks about how 23 people were indicted in alleged schemes to smuggle drugs, phones into Georgia prisons with drones. Federal prosecutors have indicted 23 people, most of them current or former inmates, in what authorities said Wednesday were schemes to smuggle drugs and cell phones into Georgia prisons. Indictments in two of the cases were unsealed on Tuesday, and they were handed down by a grand jury last month. I mean, they were handed down after being handed down. The indictments allege that inmates used contraband cell phones to coordinate drug deliveries with defendants outside the prisons. Drones were used to drop weed and meth and contraband phones into the yard at Smith State Prison in Glenville, Telfair State Prison in McRae, Helena, and other prisons over the last 5 years, beginning in 2019. Each of the defendants faced federal drug charges, and all but 6 were imprisoned at some point during the smuggling incidents outlined in the indictments, federal prosecutors said. Now, I want to point out, and they during this whole piece, man, they've seized like 10 drones, 21 firearms, and a little bit of everything. The warden at Telfair Prison was actually stabbed by an inmate with a homemade weapon back in March when the staff conducted a shakedown. This is not a new thing, particularly in the state of Georgia. Folks who live in Atlanta or familiar with Atlanta, they know that Atlanta Federal Prison, which is located right here in Atlanta, I guess it would be, there was actually a situation last year, the year before 2022, where inmates, correctional officers, etc., were arrested because, they had inmates that were being transported off the joint. They was like going to clubs and all kinds of shit. That's how how corrupt the correctional officers were. You know what I mean? You had incidents not only in the federal prisons, but even in the county jail, where you had COs sleeping with the inmates, so on and so forth. So it's not a new thing. It's somewhat business as usual. The whole drone thing, that's not a new situation. And you're wondering, it's like, okay, with all of these prison guards, with these high towers, so on and so forth, how are they not able to seize these drones? What do you think? Well, I'll give you my thoughts. It's because the correctional officers and the facilities are in cahoots. So then every now and then there has to be some type of bust in order to clean their own ass or to clear themselves. And that's pretty much how it's been. So you have that situation. You have a situation in Smith State Prison where there was an actual shooting, and an inmate was shot and killed. Excuse me, I mean, an inmate shot and killed an employee, and they believe that this particular employee had a relationship with the inmate. So this was a woman that another inmate had shot and killed. The dude that shot her was serving like a 20-year prison sentence during that time. Now, folks, again, you're wondering, like, how do you get a gun inside the prison? They said the inmate turned the gun on this particular employee while they were working in the prison kitchen. And, you know, he left a suicide note, saying that he had a personal relationship and how he obtained the gun. But this is what we're looking at when we talk about the so-called prison industrial complex. There's always some type of hustle going on. There's always some type of way to, you know, make things happen. I mean, in Atlanta Federal Penitentiary, I know that they had all kinds of drugs and whatnot. Again, they were going to the club. I mean, literally being escorted off by these COs, going to the club. So here it is. Imagine, you know, you have, let's say, a sister or someone who was in danger, you know, from one of these inmates, and, you know, they're at the club together all of a sudden. Can you imagine how insane that would be? You know someone's supposed to be in prison and they sitting at the bar next to you all of a sudden, you know. But this is how they were getting down. So this is an example of how crime pays.
No.
Any thoughts, comments?
I said it 99 ways.
Yes.
99 ways.
Yeah, and then, you know,
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you had mentioned that, you know, this bus, you would think the way it's presented, you would think that, you know, this is an unusual situation, but it's never the case. You know, like it's the same thing on the streets as well, right? Like there are people who are in positions of power that know these things are going on and they can stop these things from happening. But it's the value that they place on the lives of those people who are most affected by it, right? So because they don't place a high value on the lives of these prisoners or on our community, they allow these things to go on. They allow people. It was a murder. Someone was murdered. What was it? It was a case. It'll probably come back to me. But the point I want to make, I wanted to give an example, is there's people who get away with murder. Like they don't arrest the people. It's sort of like a justified murder, you know, like in our community, a black man or a woman murders someone, you know, horizontal violence, and they know that this person was murdered, but they let them stay on the streets though. And I'm with abolishing these colonial prison systems, right? But it's a contradiction on their part though, because it's like, okay, this is a crime that has been committed. But why do they let it? Because they don't value the life of the person who was killed. You know, if they really wanted to find the person who committed a murder or who's selling drugs, they have cameras all over the place, right? I seen one clip where they were showing the drug traffic coming out of a house, right? Because of the satellites. So, you know, they let these things go on, and then they may make a symbolic bust to say, hey, you know, we're fighting crime. But again, like they don't care about the colonized, man. You know, let's look and see how much money we can make off of them and for how long. When you do the research, man, look at the Justice Department and see how many cases that they bring against corporations, right? There's a lot. It's not talked about, but these corporations are paying fines left and right, you know, from, you know, corporations on these trading companies, finance companies, the banks. I'm doing research. I'm looking at it. 10 million. They paying $10 million here, millions of dollars here, billions of dollars here, but nobody's going to jail. You know what I'm saying? It's like business as usual. But let us like steal $100 from, you know, the McDonald's or the local store. Our ass is sitting behind bars. You know what I'm saying? But so I know I kind of like jumped around, but the point I'm making is there's no value placed on the lives of those people in that prison.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. You know, it's funny because I was just thinking back to this article that I was telling you about, and just you know, thinking about how, you know, some of the things that they highlighted when I was talking about the prison, the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. You know, it's nearly vacant right now, as they said, but some of the things that they found was 24 cell phones, 30 chargers, earbuds, Under Armour long underwear, wrap bundles of a leafy substance. They're talking about blunt wrappers, weed grinders, assorted chains, necklaces, air fresheners. I mean, just all types of things. This is just what they found when they were, you know, just contraband that they found during that particular period. So you're talking about guns and all kinds of things. So it's like, how is this even possible, you would ask? I'm talking about they found liquor, drugs, you know, different types of food, so on and so forth, heroin, you know, so it was just insane, man. So it was just like one big, you know, folks was going to jail like, you know, like it was the club, like it was a party, you know. But we're not blaming them. We're clear that the state and state workers, oftentimes these employees, these runners, you know, they still trying to hustle. They're not getting paid much to flip those keys or lock them keys. When I said flip them keys, I'm thinking about Rick Ross, because he went from, you know, locking, turning keys to flipping keys. You know what I'm saying? Folks act like they literally forgot that he was a correctional officer. Now, I don't know about y'all, but a correctional officer is a pig also. You know, some folks like, well, you know, they just trying to, anybody that voluntarily locks folks in cages, I mean, they're pigs. I mean, that's just the reality of it. You know, you can say it's just a job. I mean, shit, that's the same thing we can say about folks that's selling crack. Well, it's just a job. You know what I'm saying? What's your argument? The prison cells aren't going to harm anyone? I mean, like, come on. Exactly. But anyway, Ikemba has a story that he was dying to talk about.
Yeah, man. It's an important story. You know, I think the listeners should get this information, man.
Absolutely, I'm with you.
So yeah, we're gonna take it across the water to the motherland. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger accuse Ukraine of supporting terrorism in the Sahel. And you know, many of you are probably wondering, what the hell is Ukraine doing in Africa? Don't they have some problems of their own with Russia? Well, Russia's in Africa too, you know. So I'll get into the story a bit. United Nations, August 21st. Burkina Faso and Mali and Niger on Tuesday called on the president of the UN Security Council to denounce the open and alleged support of the Ukrainian government for international terrorism, especially in the African Sahel region. The request follows recent comments by Ukrainian officials suggesting that Kyiv has played a role in attacks by Tuareg separatist rebels that killed numerous Malian soldiers last month in the northeastern village of Tinza-Ouattane on the border with Algeria. In a joint letter, the foreign ministers of the three countries said their government was shocked by comments by Adriv Yusov, spokesman for Ukrainian military intelligence, admitting Ukraine's role in the cowardly, barbaric, and criminal attacks between July 24th and 26th. He added that the statements were confirmed by Uriel Pivovarov, Ukraine's ambassador to Senegal. Yusuf said that the rebels received the necessary information they needed to carry out the attacks after the Malian army confirmed losses in the clashes. The letter called on the Security Council to take appropriate measures against these subversive attacks that strengthen terrorist groups in Africa. The letter noted that the official comments go beyond the scope of foreign interference, which is condemnable in itself. This is an official and unequivocal support by the Ukrainian government for terrorism in Africa, especially in the Sahel. These acts also constitute a violation of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of our states, a clear aggression and support for international terrorism, and flagrant violation of the UN Charter and relevant international conventions. The letter says in part, the three countries have signed a defense pact under the formation called the Confederation of Sahel States. The Tinzawadin areas have been a battleground between separatist forces and the Malian military for the past decade. Mali and Niger earlier this month severed diplomatic relations with Ukraine, citing comments by the Ukrainian military suggesting that Kyiv had played a role in the July attacks. Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have signed a joint defense agreement that included a commitment to provide mutual military support against threats of armed insurgency or external aggression. This agreement, called the Alliance of Sahel States, which will one day be the United States of Africa, was established on 16 September 2023 and officially launched on 6 July 2024. I could stop there. I think we can really, discuss this. But yeah, this is a step in the direction of being the United States of Africa, right? But yeah, I think this is important. The question it has been raised is this a proxy war, between Russia and Ukraine or I mean, we can say Russia and
America.
Exactly. Because I mean, if you look, okay, Ukraine, how is Ukraine able to, support Africa? Where are they getting these resources from? I mean, America has since 2000 and I think 22 have given over $50 billion to Ukraine, and since 2012, I think the number is like 54 billion between 2022 and now, and then 58 billion, close to 60 billion since 2012, right? So going to your point, America is supporting and funding Ukraine to fight these conflicts with Russia, and if they're supporting groups in Africa against states, recognized states in Africa, then they're supporting terrorism as well. That's a conversation. That's a narrative that you won't see in the news either. They'll maybe there will be talks about Ukraine and what Ukraine is doing and terror, but we have to go even beyond that, right? And implicate the United States. Is the United States going to stop funding Ukraine? They're going to stop sending money over there? Probably not, right? And again, Russia's over there, and I think that's another conversation to have, because Russia is all over Africa. They have interest in Africa, and there's still sort of like this, this cold conflict or cold war that's still going on between Russia, formerly the Soviet Union, and the United States. So, we have to look at that as well, their interest in having influence over the African states. And Russia has tremendous influence throughout Africa. So yeah, I think this is an important story to raise. We have to keep a close eye out on what's happening, because we know that the United States and France, the West in general, wants to undermine the Sahel states. And so yeah, I don't know if you guys wanted to add anything to the story.
Yeah, I think, like you were saying, I think this is a very important story to look at, especially like some of the things that you were talking about, alluding to the Cold War and how these proxy wars that happened during the Cold War that destabilized countries outside of the so just even thinking about like getting to the point, but it's making me think back a little further how you have World War II, you have Europe, because a lot of the war was far on European soil, that they have to rebuild a lot within Europe, and then they're like so then you have these European countries that like Russia, that have to rebuild even after then, but during the Cold War is at odds with the United States. But because they've just come out of this war where you have the United States and the UK and France and all of them fighting against Russia. So now the question is, okay, well, we don't want to have to put our territories at risk by having a war directly on our soil, right? We don't necessarily want to use our resources to fight in Europe after World War II, because we know that we've already damaged a lot there and they're trying to rebuild, and the US is, helping to fund that along. So now it's like, okay, well, we can just fight our wars and other people's land and destroy that and destabilize them in that way. And so when we're thinking about proxy wars, how that is another way that, you have these European countries that make sure that, okay, we can fight each other, but we will make sure that the damage that's done falls on other people's lands and falls more on other people, so that we'll use other people's human resources, material resources to fight these wars, and not use our own human resources and material resources. So when you're thinking about even when you're talking about in this story how they're supporting what they call quote unquote rebels, and by giving them weapons and support that they need to be able to continue to be terrorists within Africa, that is all well and good as long as that's not happening on their continent. And then also when it comes to that happening within Africa, what does that do to, like, let's say, you have their sovereignty, as the article mentioned, right? If that same thing had happened in the United States, war would be declared tomorrow, right? It would be like if Ukraine had done that and supported, forces, quote, terrorist forces here in the US, war would be declared tomorrow. If they had done that in, one of the other countries in Europe, war would be declared tomorrow. So that, their sovereignty is the sovereignty of, all of these colonial countries, these colonizers, their sovereignty is protected and recognized. But when it comes to countries in Africa, their sovereignty, when it's trampled upon, they can't even do the things that you would do naturally in that situation, where like, okay, then you have to just break your ties with them, break your diplomatic ties with them. Like, you have to kind of like not actually be able to protect yourself and defend yourself in the way that you could, because of the fact that this is a European backed, another like, US backed country. Like, because Ukraine is backed by the US and funded by the US, them violating the sovereignty of the Sahel states is not seen as, and they can't respond, and they're kind of like handcuffed in the way that they respond, because you have these countries that are backing them, these, like the US, because of the fact that they are the colonial power that, like that colonial power that currently exists. And so just thinking about like what that does to a country, and when we think about destabilization and sovereignty, what does it really mean then when we're talking about sovereignty? If you have sovereignty, you're a sovereign country, but when another country comes and and you could prove it and everything, all you could do really, because of the position that you're in, is break ties with them and kind of put out the press and stuff, but not be able to respond in the way that, let's say, in America would respond if their sovereignty was challenged in that kind of way, and not even just challenged, just trampled upon.
That's white supremacy right there. That's European supremacy. Hey, one set of rules for them and another set of rules for us. But this whole thing with Ukraine, they got to answer some questions, man.
Yeah,
are they going to still
a lot of questions?
Yeah. I think that's what I had a brain freeze right there, but that's what I think like needs to happen. They like, and that's why Ukraine, that's why that's how they're able to fight this conflict or fight this war, this war with Russia without directly fighting with them, right? They can go through Ukraine, and it's sort of like their hands are clean, right? Or they can go through another, country or state, or a terrorist group, right? What's happening in Congo, I'll bring them up, but yeah, like these conflicts can take place, and America can like support a group and have their hands clean. But at the end of the day, they're behind it. They have the resources, they have the power. They can also, stop it if they want. They can cut a lot of these groups off, cut their resources off, and make it difficult for them to maintain a fight with anyone. Ukraine, the only reason they're still able to struggle with Russia and fight, a proxy war, maybe possibly a proxy war in Africa, is because they have the backing of the U.S.
Yeah, and you said it right too. Like, for one, they use manufactured consent, to manipulate individuals into thinking that Ukraine is receiving quote unquote humanitarian aid. No, they're receiving money to continue the ethnic cleansing of the Donbass region and to expand upon what was to be told not to be expanded upon. Okay, so that whole, narrative, poking the bear. Okay, well, yeah, you poked the Russian bear so much that it woke up pre-hibernation. And now you're reaping the repercussions of that. And in part, these wars are then fought on our homeland, and it's for the exact thing that Ikemba was saying. It's the reason why they don't get caught, why they don't get held accountable, is because they have aligned with white hegemony. And it's not even just, I can go further. The Azov battalions, the Nazi battalions that they have, the Nazi regimes, them tying up Romani and Jewish individuals to poles with duct tape. The fact that they idolized Stefan Bandera. Stefan Bandera was a whole ass Nazi who had concentration camps. I don't know. I'm sorry if you guys can hear in the background right now what you're hearing. Okay, if you guys can't, okay. They every day, 3 times a day, they fly the same jets that are bombing Palestine. I hear them test them before they go, and they send them on their way and whatnot. Here in Vegas, that's what they do. A lot of the testing that they do for planes and ammunition is in Death Valley and in the deserts of Nevada and California. But besides the point, the fact that the fact that Hitler idolized what happened to the indigenous people, what America did to the indigenous people, and embodied that through what he did to the Jewish people, of Europe. And Stefan Bandera was a part of that regime. He was one of Hitler's right hand men. And so we also have to look at what happens after World War II. A lot of the SSR officers, some were held accountable, but also some could be seen taking photos with RFK walking off of whole ass 747 planes, and some of them becoming the heads of NATO. The fact that the first head of NATO was a Nazi. So it gets you to understand why Ukraine gets so much money, is because they are historically embedded in the same aesthetics that upholds America with 3 Ks, which is white hegemony, eugenics, the white power structure, and making sure that European Eurocentric ideology is what is administered, which it's done in part on our homelands. And so I think you guys hit a lot of talking points on the nail, so I feel like I would just be going over them over and over. So I just wanted to bring a historical understanding to why Ukraine has interests in Africa and why they're scared of an African United States, is because when there's an African United States, which people like Gaddafi was trying to emulate with the gold dinar, it scares European and American hegemony shitless, because then again, you can't back your paperless money, your paper money, off of our resources anymore. You have to then come up with your own resources and the resources you have is rat infested sewers in France, shit rivers, and and whatnot. So bland ass food. When people ask if you got seasoning, y'all say y'all got gravy. So
Listen, you said shit river, and Natacha was drinking. I saw her face go like you have to talk about shit river now. I'm drinking my coffee. Now anyway, tea, right? But anyway, no, we definitely appreciate you adding on. I was still trying to figure out. You said the things that America stood for begins with America with 3 Ks. And I was trying to figure out if the words you were talking about was going to be starting with Ks. I'm sitting there listening. That's how you know it's still early in the morning, and I'm still on the grind. But we definitely appreciate your input. I think Natacha has a story we know it from.
Just rolling with the stories today. I love it. I love it.
This connects to what we're talking about, because all of it is connected.
Mm-hmm.
And so the story that is, and one of the ones that I think that is interesting that more people should know about is this story of, because it kind of opens up. So there's this story of African migrants tortured, held for ransom, found by Mexico police. But I think this connects right back to what's happening on the African continent, right? What's going on when we're thinking about migration? Because I think even when people thinking about the migrant crisis, sometimes people don't realize that there's Africans coming in from south of the border as well. And they're coming from places like Morocco, and they're coming from places like Sudan, and they're going through Mexico in order to get here. And why? And when people think about like, okay, well, why would how do you get here? I think that was for me when I first realized some of these migrants are coming from Africa that are coming into this country. And I'm like, damn, that's a long journey to go over from Africa to go into South America, Central America, and to be able to come over here. And so thinking about what would make somebody do that, right? Take that long of a journey. Like, people aren't just going to do it just because okay, I want a vacation, or, hey, I want to move from this area code to another area code. No, the fact that you're taking that big of a journey to be able just to get to the US is something that I think, people don't pay enough attention to, especially when we're thinking about African people and the migration that's happening. And the reason it's happening because of all the destabilization that's going on, because of things like what we're just in the story that Ikemba showed, in terms of what's happening in the Sahel states and what's been happening in the Sahel states when we think about terroristic groups and how they've been, were funded by France funding some of these groups, and why they had to get France up out of here. And so the migration is a really big thing that I think people talk so much lightly about. And a lot of times we're not thinking about African people and the migration that's happening with that. But just to tell you about the story with the African migrants that were tortured within Mexico, it was a group of African migrants that they, according to the story, says a group of African migrants were allegedly kidnapped, tortured, and held for ransom before being released, according to authorities in Mexico. So 4 Sudanese and 6 Moroccans were taken to a shelter house housing migrants by police for further medical and psychological assistance. And that's because they were found walking on the side of the road, just really physically looking out bad, and also mentally. And they were victims of being kidnapped and tortured and extortion of their families in order for them to be released. And none of them spoke any Spanish, the local police had said, but they were described as, when people seeing them, and who the people who made the 911 call said that they were walking erratically in deplorable conditions. And what's interesting also is that the article talks about how, it says organized gangs represent a threat to people's financial and physical security. The most vulnerable members of society, including asylum seekers and migrants, are subject to the most acute threats. And these include multiple forms of assault, extortion, abuse, that would-be migrants must often enlist the services of smugglers, only heightens their vulnerability to traffickers and gangs. And then it also goes on to talk about how it talks about the U.S. and the police and the migrant crisis and how that is affecting what's going on. And they mentioned that the most effective means of keeping migrants safe is to create a realistic legal pathways to movement, which I think is something, that not enough conversation is happening around as well. And then it talks about that, however, the combination of anti-narcotic and anti-migrant measures instituted by the U.S., often with Mexican collaboration, has made the border a more dangerous place for everyone. American efforts to enlist police and security forces in Mexico and Central America as part of their anti-migration efforts have empowered them, fostering corruption and violence and limiting access to protection. These are not particularly effective at controlling the movement of people or goods that come at a great cost. And then finally it says that poverty and persecution are driving African migrants to seek refuge in Mexico and the U.S. And Africans, like everyone else, are seeking places where they can find economic and political security, faced with poverty, persecution, and precarity in their home countries. So they're looking for alternatives. And that story also reminded me and connected me to another story that I started paying attention to, that I found out about in June, where you have a rise of women, African women within Africa who are migrating into Europe, getting addicted to cocaine and crack. The same way when we think about the crack epidemic here, you're having that happen in Africa, in these different places where they're getting addicted to it, and because they're getting caught up in a smuggling loop where they're in this same one where they're talking about you have to pay different shady groups to help you get from here to there, and then they're selling drugs, and this is being fueled by Europe's need for cocaine. So they're bringing cocaine in from Mexico, from South America, into the shores of Africa, smuggling it into parts of Africa, and then smuggling it up north into Europe. And that's what's fueling that. But we know that, the European intervention and all of these things that we're talking about, the destabilization of these countries in Africa, is leading to them having to migrate out of these countries. And so you're seeing how all of this is in this perfect storm of, colonialism, and that these drugs that are, even being, and these gangs that are able to sell these drugs are part of this whole network that supports and props up all of this stuff, where you then have, this huge migration crisis. And then the response to the migration crisis is also leading to things like what we're, discussing in this article.
This is so, I mean, I don't know if it's sad, if it's infuriating, if it's all of the above. You know what I mean? Because looking at this, you're talking about 10 African migrants, and you're talking about the fact that they were malnourished, dehydrated, and they said they were showing multiple, wounds on their bodies and whatnot. This isn't, it's not exclusive to any particular group. Ecuadorians and others trying to get through this area, through that region, to quote unquote make it to the promised land, kidnapped, tortured by these cartels. Many of these cartels in cahoots with the United States. Many of these cartels trained by the United States, so on and so forth, these mercenaries, etc. And just the price for freedom. Again, I mentioned earlier that Malcolm said the price for freedom is death. And to see how humans are so disgusting, how they treat other humans, let alone animals, let alone the planet, you know what I'm saying, the environment, but how you deal with other humans. I'm talking about, just the cruelty is a whole nother level of thought, and to see these men, women, children, many times they are killed and placed in the back of trucks and whatnot for as the graveyards, left in open fields, so on and so forth. To see this is it's like, it's amazing the level of insanity that humans have. Meanwhile, many of us are arguing and debating over whose organization is the best, arguing and debating about YouTube channels and all kinds of other bullshit, when this is reality. So today we talked about political prisoners. Today we talked about what's going on the continent. Today we talked about, this particular story here. And I wonder, what side of the barricades will you be on? I'm talking to the audience right now. I'm wondering, with all this information, with all this knowledge, and there's plenty of more, we got plenty of stories. And shout out to some of the folks who have been instrumental in helping us to get these stories. Shout out to our sister Liliana out in Houston for assisting with some of these stories, and for others who would like to assist in getting certain stories out, because again, this is an international morning show. We're not here to just talk about what's going on locally. We're not spending a whole bunch of time. Of course, earlier, the comrades talked about movies and entertainment, but our job is not to necessarily attack the artist or attack the individual. We're talking about the organized corruption and the criminality and the psychological warfare that is waged on us as African and indigenous people, other colonized people around the globe. When you talk about Russia and Ukraine, you know what I'm saying? We know, just keeping it 100, and I know this is an unpopular statement I'm going to make, but neither one of them are our friends. Let's not get it twisted. But we know Ukraine is pure toilet water. You know what I'm saying? We know that they are, they roll a certain way, and they're backed and financed and supported by the U.S. and by Israel and by the EU and by NATO. You know what I'm saying? And so many other forces, the United Nations. And we run. I'm not saying we, but the people expect justice or some type of compassion from places like the UN, when indeed the United Nations is a puppet for Israel and the United States. Now, I know a lot of people don't like that, don't like us saying it, but it's the truth. Genocide is being committed across the globe in real time. We have the unfortunate displeasure of watching what's going on in Palestine, but many folks aren't talking about what's going on, about the story you just read. The number of families that are being tortured, displaced, and destroyed. And meanwhile, you got these crackers talking about building a wall. Yeah, I mean, shit, I want you to build a wall so I could separate myself from y'all. You know what I'm saying? That might be a good thing. You know what I'm saying?
Build a boat. Get your ass
Exactly.
back to the other side of the water.
Man, you know what I'm saying? Isaac told him to build a boat. Yeah, build a bear, motherfucker. We don't care. Let's get up out our face, man. We just trying to survive out here. Anyway, we got a few minutes left. I appreciate my co-hosts for being consistent, and I'm going to say this, something I don't usually say on air. I appreciate all the hosts that are on Black Power Media currently, those new and those who have been here, because we know that there's always opposition and there's always attempts and efforts to distract, destroy, and for you all to be brave enough to say, look, we're on the side of anti-imperialism, we're on the side of anti-Zionism, and our job, our duty, our task is to build, right? Period. Our position is love. And that's the thing that folks don't understand. You know, to paraphrase Che, revolution is an act of love. This is why we do what we do. We're not here because we want to be YouTube celebrities.
No.
You know what I'm saying? I don't know if Natacha's planning on building a career on YouTube after.
Yeah, okay.
Come to Natacha's. You know what I'm saying? That's not what we're doing. Isaac, we already know he ain't building no damn career off YouTube.
I think too that people too, I think this is extra work. It's not, this is not like, I have time, let me just do this. No, this is extra work.
Labor of love.
So, if you're doing it because, like you were saying, it's a labor of love, and because you care enough about and love our people enough to want to get the information out there that is constantly being sidestepped or made to be invisible. Because even doing a Google search, like when people talk about like, oh, this is today's time and the internet is so available, people can just Google, but people have to know what to Google.
Right.
Yeah.
And people have to know, when you do Google, okay, there's a million things that come up. And there's also a million things that don't come up.
That's
what's
right.
on the front page? What's not on the front page? Like you'll Google, you can Google something like Black families. You'll get a couple of pictures of Black families, and you got a bunch of other families that are just not Black. So it's just like it's the information is there, but it's not that easy for people to get to it as people think because we have this internet thing. So yeah, it's a labor of love to say like, I think it's important for our people to get this information.
No, and to your point, none of us, including me, are getting paid. None of us. I mean, whatever little chips that we've gotten, that's what keep what it is we're doing afloat. You know what I'm saying? For us to even get on it, there's a price for us to get on the internet. I don't think folks look at that. I'm not even and that's not even talking about our personal homes. I'm just saying just things like StreamYard. You know what I mean? Things like, they're not, they're not, like, oh, you angry ass militants, let's give them a show. We're not sponsored. You know what I'm saying? We're not, and it's a painful thing because what happens is we will put all of our resources into as much bullshit as possible. But when it comes to real shit, we ain't got no resources. But anyway, we appreciate the work that you all are doing. Salute to my co-hosts, Natacha, Isaac, Ikemba, to our brothers, Bouna and Fernando.
French
and
Connect.
Who you said?
I said the French Connect.
Oh, the French Connect. I ain't even gonna say that. They be looking like they be getting mad when you say that. So, leave Bouna alone. Bouna, that was Isaac. Anyway, we have a number of guests coming up this week. Make sure that you tune in to our previous shows. Stay on point. Rise up. Black Power Media. We out.
Sometimes the riot is a quiet one, where the battle is to love yourself and function in society, where voices of reason are muted by anxiety, like gaining notoriety is selling your soul. So we tend to go no deeper than the shallow water level, trying to keep us overhead in the face of all the slurs and the stares, mentally frozen, paralyzed by fear of failure and success. So we lock, stock, barrel, running while it's crumbling. All these towers and they're babbling, but the baby's in the bath and the stash under the bed on my head, spinning from the circles and the puppets and the strings that they pull. Then we move. Reactionary warfare never produces when it's on the field. Feeble and foolish. What tools and what weapons are we using? We need some new ones. Real revolution. It's real solutions. What we've taken on the ways of the ones who conquer with their guns and religion and division. Got my inner me looking like my enemy. Real revolution. Where my inner me really a mirror for the galaxy. New time, brand new paradigms, new contracts to sign. They thought that this would all be televised, though it's happening right before our very eyes. It's on the inside, with their guns cocked. When that rock drops, standing on the rooftop, praying that the mountaintop can live inside the valley. People tell me the reward is somewhere off in heaven, like heaven's only in the sky. Like chariots are swinging, like God is something separate from yourself, from your wealth, from your lover, from your neighbor. Oh, your savior, it's coming in your own name, coming with the face the same. Real revolution, it's real solutions. Where we've taken on the ways of the ones who conquer with their guns and religion and division. Got my inner me looking like my enemy.